Hi, and welcome to A Slice of Mental Health. I'm your co-host, Cara.
And I'm Tracy, Cara's mum.
We are obviously a mother-daughter duo, and today this is an introduction to A Slice of Mental Health. The whole point of A Slice of Mental Health is it's an our experienced look at the world, that is the mental health world, the mental health sector. And we're going to be pulling from our own experiences during a lot of these conversations, and they are going to be short slices, about 20-30 minutes long, shorter sometimes, longer sometimes, but essentially we are sharing our relationship as mother-daughter and sharing how we've come to have a good adult relationship, and kind of what's happened.
Yeah, I think
to get to this.
It's very much about sharing our experience, because we think this is maybe a little bit more unusual. So there's a lot out there around mental health and well-being, but the lens that we're really going to be looking at, which is different, is about looking at our relationship as a mum and a daughter. And I think what else is also unique about this is that whilst Cara was struggling with her mental health, I was also struggling with mine. And there's a lot of stigma around that. There's a lot of stigma around trying to be a parent whilst trying to raise a healthy child, which fortunately Cara is now. But for many years, she wasn't. And my hope is that we can reduce the stigma, and that maybe young women who are listening to this feel a bit more hopeful that we can't promise it will get totally better, but we can promise it changes and gets different. And we can also hopefully share some of the things that helped us and to navigate this as a mum and daughter, through those years. And hopefully we want people to feel less alone, I think, ultimately, don't we? We know that people use this medium to access information, but also to validate how they might be feeling. And it's just all about being human.
Yeah. And part of having these good conversations is being vulnerable. And Mum and I are going to have to be vulnerable to be able to share our story, to help shine a light on, I certainly can shine a light on that scared, ill, challenged teenager perspective. I was mentally ill for, I'm going to say 11 years. Yeah, probably like from the age of 7 to 18 roughly. I had my last breakdown at 18. Perfectly candid, but yeah. And, I know what it feels like to be that teenager that's also going through puberty, and to have all my mental health difficulties kind of dismissed and told, oh, well, you're just a teenager.
Yeah.
So I know what that feels like, and I know what it feels like to have the wrong things said to you as well. But also what really does work. And despite it, Mum and my dad really did say the right things a lot of the time, and there was a lot of growth in the way my parents parented me. So context, I think, is always appropriate.
It is, yeah.
So I'm 24, and I can proudly say I have been in recovery now for 6 years. And that's recovery from formal diagnoses of depression, anxiety, self-harm, and suicidal ideation. And it's I try my best to not reflect on how brutal it was to grow up with those diagnoses and illnesses, but it was, and I did have them during really crucial developmental times, and I have come out the other side, but that doesn't mean they're any less of an impact on who I am. But what has been good about them, the growth, is that they've helped me realise what I want to do. So what I'm doing is I'm studying a mental health nursing degree. And what's really important when studying something like that is being able to pull from your personal experiences. So that's been
absolutely
very handy, despite it. But I can only say that because I'm on the other side of it.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, from about the age of, I'd say 5, I was bullied, psychologically bullied, and that kind of persisted throughout my teenage years, and I mean, ultimately resulted in mental illness. So that's going to come up quite a bit in our
Well,
podcast.
it's kind of the point
of
is
it, yeah.
it's kind of the point. So, maybe I can come in and just say that, what we want to give is an honest and authentic approach here. We're experienced, and we're going to tell you a little bit about our experiences. But this, as you can see, is we've staged it, fairly staged, but we also want to really just be really honest about what we're talking about and what really happened. And I suppose maybe I could, maybe talk a little bit about being a parent,
Yeah,
and being a mum. And I think one of the things is, so I didn't know I was struggling with my mental health until I had my breakdown. And I think that's the thing about you become a parent when you're still growing yourself. So you don't really know yourself. I mean, I was 28 when we had Cara's sister, and you're just trying to do everything. You're trying to have a career, you're trying to have relationships, you're probably having to think about money, house, flat, somewhere to live, whatever. And then you have a child on top of that. So it's a really kind of, really, really kind of busy time in life. And then you have a child. And I think, particularly in the world that we live in, that perfectionism, that perfect parent model, we're all expected to look a certain way, act a certain way, have the right car, have the right house, do the right thing, and then you have a child. You have a child. And unfortunately, other parents aren't that kind to each other. And I think that makes it really tough as well. So you don't enter...
However, other parents aren't willing to be honest and vulnerable.
Well, sometimes you just think, is everyone having an easier job than me? But I'm sure everyone can relate to the fact that you anything that you go to, it's like, oh yes, my child's sleeping, and you're like,
my child's going to be a doctor and a lawyer.
Yeah, and my child's sleeping,
At the age of 3
and
months.
my child's not sleeping. Yeah, so there's a lot of parents out there telling you what they want you to hear,
but that comes from their own insecurities.
Well, it does.
Everyone, that's what we know about people, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone just kind of.
But at the time,
hides under their.
Yeah, but at the time you don't notice that. So, I suppose that what I want to say is that we know parenting is the hardest job, but it's hard to get support around it. And I guess the other thing is that if you're a working parent, and most of us are working in some capacity, and even if you're not working, you're working as a parent. But I'm a project manager, and I know generally I'm a pretty good project manager, which is nice. And I know I have a vision of what I want to happen, and generally it happens. I mean, it's not straightforward, but it generally happens.
She's being humble. She's an amazing project manager.
Well, it generally happens. But when you're raising a child, it's such a long time. They say that, I think it's 26, is it? You're supposed to be a proper adult? So you're not a proper adult yet.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. But it says...
that gives me time to continue to grow.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not my final version. Yeah, that's good for me.
And I'm 54 or 55, depending on which day you listen to this. And I don't feel like I'm fully grown either. So are we ever fully grown? But talking about being... having a vision, I think we think we have a vision of what being a parent's going to be like, what raising a child's going to be like, and then when it's not that way, and in fact it's so far removed from it, and actually my job as a parent, I think, is to raise a happy, healthy child that can eventually be independent of me.
And you've managed to do that even through...
Well, this is what's lovely, and this is a bit where we give you hope, because you don't feel like that when you're in it. So we're very fortunate, and I think that's some of the sharing, is that Cara is now at a place where she's better. But if you're in the place when your child isn't, it's really hard to believe that it's going to be any different. And we, just to show how serious this is, because I think sometimes when you meet people further on their journey, you think, oh no, it wasn't that bad for them. But we really thought Cara wouldn't be able to leave home. We thought she'd have to live with us, and she might get a part-time job, but she had a long-term condition and she was going to have to live with us for the rest of her life. It feels like she lives with us sometimes, but in a good way.
In London.
Yeah.
She didn't move 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah, and we will talk about that, because I think there's something about when your child separates and what they do choose to do, and how you support that transition. But yeah, back to this being a parent being in the toughest job, it's like you don't know what you're getting right or what you're getting wrong, and you have a vision of what you think the end result should look like. And everyone's telling you what the end result should look like, whether it's schools or other parents or the TV, and it's just not that way.
And this is so applicable to being in your 20s as well. It's also, I think going to come up quite a bit is, it's not just about the stigma that you experience as a parent, it's also stigma you experience as a growing individual. And if you have a child on top of that as well, that really imagine complicates it. But I certainly experienced this as a 24-year-old, especially now with being this social media generation. Everyone compares themselves to everyone. Bloody hell, it feels like you can't take your time with things anymore. Like, you've got to, the classic phrase, like, you've got to be a CEO by 30 and drive an Audi and be an influencer and have a lot of money and that is such a pressure as well. And you feel like if you're not doing that, then you're a failure. So it comes about, maybe what we're talking about is just general stigma that we have in this society, Western society, of what achievement looks like and what success looks like. Because me personally, I'm just glad that I'm not mentally ill anymore, and that's about it. I know I will have done things that people would have viewed as successful, but ultimately I'm just glad that I'm not that I've made it past 16, which was something that mum has dealt with, that fear that
and that is just horrible. And I suppose we're talking about both things here. We're talking about just being human and the normal kind of emotions and things you go, and we're talking about really, really real illness. And I think that's...
But it's when those expectations lead to breakdown. It's okay to have expectations of yourself, but when it leads to you feeling like you're not good enough and that you're always going to fail, and why it freezes you, that's when it becomes a problem.
And I suppose I probably should share, so being clear, I didn't know I was struggling with mental health problems until I had my breakdown, and it was kind of a real shock when somebody said to me, so I think you've got depression. Well, not somebody, it was I'd gone for counselling. I said, I think you've got depression. And I said, no, I don't think I have. I think this is just the way I am.
Because that's what you'd always been.
Yeah, and so there's a bit about that thing about, what's personality. And I think that's quite important as well, Cara, isn't it? About, growing up. It's like you're still evolving your personality and growing. And as a mum, we've got this little personality that we're trying to raise, and you don't want to quash that personality because that little person's growing, but equally you're a bit confused because, and especially if other people are telling you, oh, well, they're just a bit sensitive.
Yeah, their personality isn't the right type of personality, so do something about it.
Yeah. So I think it's complex, and I suppose the other thing that to hear Cara say that she had a good home life and she had a good childhood, we tried our hardest, but at times it was exhausting to do that, and I didn't think we were giving her the best because we couldn't fix what was going on at school. And I think the impact that had on my mental health, which was already an issue, and that's what I'm saying about these layers of things that happen, is what makes it really difficult, because you go from discovering you've got a problem and then seeing your child struggle with a very similar problem. And I think that's something we're going to talk about more as well, is about how that mirroring, so you can model the right things, but you can also model the wrong things, and how complicated that is when you're trying to model what you want for your child, which is, strong, healthy, getting out there, active, having a good life, modelling and family life, when actually on days you just want to crawl under the duvet and not come out and not be a parent for the day. But as every parent knows, unfortunately, that's not an option.
Yeah. So I guess if you're still with us, 15 minutes in, you probably picked up. Mum and I have done a lot of talking, and we really have developed a style with each other and how to talk about. Mum's story is my story, and my story is Mum's story, and we know each other's inside out and how we feel about them. But I guess ultimately, a slice of mental health is going to maybe mirror a little bit of how to have these good conversations. If you're someone listening that's like, oh, I've got a story, maybe not, it's not going to be identical, but maybe a bit similar. This is how it's worked for us, and if you're feeling at a bit of a loss, if you're a teenager, if you're someone in their 20s who thinks, actually, I might need to talk to my mum about this thing, then we're showing that there is a way to do it, and we have a lot of therapeutic language. I've probably at this point had more therapy than Mum, but I laugh at that, but actually I laugh at that, but actually I don't think that's a bad thing, because I'm actually also a very boundaried person, and I know my mind, and I know how I want people to talk to me, and I know how I want you to call it adult parent me, because you can't parent me, but you can certainly. I come to you a lot for advice and for counsel, and that I feel very fortunate we have that, but we've also worked to get that.
Yeah, and again, I've said we won't sugarcoat this, and we want to be authentic. It hasn't always been this way.
God, no, there's fighting, and
so
not understanding each other, and there's stigma on each other.
So we do want to talk about some of that, and I suppose just to give a little bit of context as well. We're saying this is experienced look because it is an experienced look, because we've both experienced mental health problems, but just to say some of my background as well is that I'm a nurse, and I was a health visitor for 13 years, and I've worked in public health for the last 16 years, and I've also been a coach for the last 16 years, so there's been a kind of professional growth, and I know that has helped me learn to have these better conversations. It's also got in the way, particularly when I was a health visitor, and I thought, well, I should know this stuff, and I can't even get it right. So it's got in the way of being a parent, but it's also helped me have these kind of conversations with Cara, and we have a bit of a joke, don't we? So it's like, even now she'll go like, she'll come around and I said, right, do you want a mum chat or do you want a coaching chat? Because they're quite different. And
do you need me to listen or do you need advice? I mean, I do that with my friends, because sometimes you do. Sometimes you need to just vent and rant, but that's setting a safe space and a boundary.
Yeah. So we have almost like code words, So Cara will be quite clear with me when she says, Mum, I don't need you to fix this.
I know how to fix it myself. I just want to vent. Yes. I know what I need to do. I just need to talk.
Yeah. And also we've talked a little bit about going for therapy, and we just want to say that we appreciate that that's not accessible to everybody, and everyone has different supports around them, and context. And I suppose we're going to talk about the fact that there's support for young people, children, it's really hard to get, but it's also really hard to get support as a parent. If your child is struggling with their mental health, we know there's quite a lot of family therapy for anorexia, but not for more general mental health. So I think that's something we want to talk about, but also we know that there's never going to be enough. So it's about, can we find the conversation, the language to have with each other that might be more supportive for when we're being a parent or just growing into being, adult to adult. So that's some of it, is we know we can never get all the help we need. And I guess the other thing is just to acknowledge that we all have different supports around, and Cara's dad was there for Cara sometimes when I couldn't even be there. So
more in the sort of like teenage years, yeah. Because dad had his own, and Dad might come on and chat at some point, but he's had his own epiphany, I'd call it. Real growth.
Yeah. So and also grandparents who were very much able to let Cara be who she needed to be as well. So we all have different supports around. So I don't, again, it's not that we're doing this in isolation, but equally, there really wasn't enough out there. And I think some of it, the main bit for me, is the stigma around it. I just all the time felt like I was getting it really wrong. Yeah. So yeah, it's probably, I wonder if we've kind of said enough, or I've probably said enough. Is there some things you want to add before we finish our kind of introduction to us? Do you think we've covered it? Or
yeah, I think the only thing I'd maybe highlight is, we're not, this isn't a podcast about giving solid advice and that, if you go and do this is going to make your life better, and if you apply all these things that we do, there is knowing things and then there's the reality of applying them. And we, we're not coming from this like we're the experts and you as a listener are the layman and you need to learn from us. It's really, we just think it's important that families share this narrative if they've got one. And it is going to be a part, there is a movement, and it is, we want to be part of that movement, and because we so passionately know and understand that talking via parent to child, child to parent, our first-hand experiences, that is just such a bloody good thing to do. And it does take vulnerability, and it does take being able to go, hey Mum, when you used to say that to me, this is how that made me feel. It does take some really hard conversations, but if both parties are open and willing, then we know the benefit of it. And again, that is not to say that we are perfect. Sometimes we just both shut down on each other, or Mum will come to me needing some support, or I'll go to her. We just can't give it to each other, but we'll talk about it later date of how we manage that. But it's yeah. This is, we aren't perfect experts, but we feel we found a good way of navigating our story together, and if that.
Okay, so thank you for listening.
And if you've been on YouTube, thank you for watching. We have got. Can I do the marketing branding site now?
You can, as you're good at that.
So we have got a YouTube channel. If you find us on a Slice of Mental Health, we're on YouTube. You will be one of our first subscribers if you are listening.
Please subscribe.
Yeah, so if you could give us a like and a follow and a subscribe.
Yeah.
Which I feel like people just know to do that these days. If you're interested in what we're doing, then
they do, and I guess it'll encourage us to do more of this.
I think we're going to do it anyway. We could chat. Yeah. We could chat for Scotland.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to stop us from doing this. But if people want to join us on a journey, we are on YouTube. We have got a Facebook and a Twitter. We have got an Instagram, but there's nothing on it yet because I've not done it yet. So yeah, we're building it out. But right now we're sharing this podcast wherever you're listening. And yeah, we start our first series the 1st of May.
Yeah. So
thank you for joining us.
This is a Slice of Mental Health.
It is a Slice of Mental Health.